Hi everyone, it's me, 𝒖𝒂𝒏𝒕𝒚. Today is Wednesday, December 25th, 2024. This video is dedicated to my beloved, and the topic of this video is going to be about how and why quality is more important than quantity. So before I get started on talking about this topic in further detail and sharing a passage that comes from a book that is very dear to me, I wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas if you celebrate. I hope that you're enjoying this day, or at least taking it as a day of rest from your regular activities. So going back to the topic of this video, which is how quality is more important than quantity. In order to illustrate this topic to you today, I'd like to share with you a passage that comes from the book Walden, or Life in the Woods by Henry David Thoreau. And I have multiple copies of Walden, but I thought that this was particularly beautiful because it contains many lovely illustrations. And Walden is a book that truly changed my life when I first read it as a 17-year-old junior in high school. So the passage that I wanted to share with you today from Walden comes from the chapter titled Where I Lived and What I Lived For. So before I read the passage aloud to you, I'd like to show it to you in case you'd like to read some of it yourself. So I'll be reading part of those 2 pages to you. And here it goes. We must learn to reawaken and keep ourselves awake, not by mechanical aids, but by an infinite expectation of the dawn, which does not forsake us in our soundest sleep. I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by a conscious endeavor. It is something to be able to paint a particular picture, or to carve a statue, and so to make a few objects beautiful. But it is far more glorious to carve and paint the very atmosphere and medium through which we look, which morally we can do. To affect the quality of the day, that is the highest of arts. Every man is tasked to make his life, even in its details, worthy of the contemplation of his most elevated and critical hour. If we refused, or rather used up, such paltry information as we get, the oracles would distinctly inform us how this might be done. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation, unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms, and if it proved to be mean, why then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it and publish its meanness to the world, or if it were sublime, to know it by experience and be able to give a true account of it in my next excursion. For most men, it appears to me, are in a strange uncertainty about it, whether it is of the devil or of God, and have somewhat hastily concluded that it is the chief end of man here to glorify God and enjoy him forever. Still we live meanly like ants, though the fable tells us that we were long ago changed into men. Like pygmies we fight with cranes. It is error upon error, and clout upon clout. and our best virtue has for its occasion a superfluous and evitable wretchedness. Our life is frittered away by detail. An honest man has hardly need to count more than his 10 fingers, or in extreme cases he may add his 10 toes and lump the rest. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. I say, let your affairs be as 2 or 3, and not 100 or 1,000. Instead of 1,000,000, count half a dozen, and keep your accounts on your thumbnail. In the midst of this chopping sea of civilized life, such are the clouds and storms and quicksands and 1,001 items to be allowed for, that a man has to live, if he would not founder and go to the bottom, and not make his port at all, by dead reckoning, and he must be a great calculator indeed who succeeds. Simplify, simplify. Instead of 3 meals a day, if it be necessary, eat but 1. Instead of 100 dishes, 5. And reduce other things in proportion. So that is what I wanted to read to you today from Walden. And I remember that when I first read that passage as a 17-year-old, it really made me think very deeply about how life would be so much simpler and we could live so much more deeply if we had less to worry about in every sphere of life. So ever since then, I had been trying to live more simply and have fewer things, fewer friends, and fewer obligations, because I came to learn that when I had fewer of those things, I was able to enjoy each of them much more deeply. And for example, when I had fewer obligations, I was able to perform those obligations in much greater depth and more completely. And at certain points since then, over the last 10 years, I have found myself being busier than I would like to be, and having a lot of details to worry about, particularly as a medical student and a pre-med student. And while a lot of those details are necessary, some of them aren't so necessary, and it is much better to do less, but do it in greater depth and with greater understanding, and putting our entire heart into whatever it is that we are doing. When we have too much going on around us, too many people, too many work obligations, too many social obligations, we're not able to devote as much of ourselves to each of those things. We have to divide our attention, and as a result, what we do is of less quality than what it might have been if we had less to do. So if you're one of those people who likes to have a lot to do and always be busy, I'd like to encourage you to think more deeply about whether each and every single thing that you're doing is of good quality as well, and whether you're sacrificing quality for quantity. And if you are, I'd like to ask you to lessen the amount of things that you have to do and make yourself less busy and have fewer friends, fewer work obligations, fewer social obligations, and fewer possessions. And try to minimalize all of those things in your life so that you could enjoy each of them much more deeply and get the full value out of each thing. I know that this is hard to do, and especially in the society that we live in now, more is often encouraged, but I want to encourage you to do better and do your best with less. And that is the philosophy that I follow in my own personal life. I hope that I can serve as an example for you to do the same. So that is my message for today. I hope that you learned something very valuable, or if not, I hope that you at least enjoyed listening to me reading that passage from Walden. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen to and or watch my video today. Also, Merry Christmas. And with that, I'd like to wish you a wonderful day, afternoon, evening, or whatever it is, wherever you are in the world.